Hello, and thank you for joining us here at the Anarchist Experience. My name is Robert Kruger. I'm your host. We are a part of the Voluntary Virtues Network. My co-host, Daniel Rothschild, is joining me today. We are going to go through a variety of different threads that have been put together by people on um, the Facebook group called Ancap versus Ancom debate. The discussion group that we're dealing with here. They tend to have a lot of anarcho-communists, and their particular bent is one that isn't exactly open to a lot of discussion, it seems, unfortunately. But there are some people from time to time who are willing to have a good conversation and discuss and explain things. Um, one of the conversations that I recently had, and I guess I should probably go ahead and share this one with you here, Daniel, so you can just take a look. Let's see. All right. Actually, I don't know if you're going to be able to get into this because the limitations of Facebook might not, let you in, since you might not be a member. Are you a member of this group, Daniel?
No, not that I know of.
Okay, well, let's see. Here you go. Just pop that open, and then if you roll down, scroll on down to a little bit further down. Brent Lingell says the word corporatism has nothing to do with corporations.
Hold on. I just see the members. Hold on, let me see if I can. Yeah, see the date. Nope, all on slide. Let me see is the members.
Okay, well, Brent says the word corporatism has nothing to do with corporations. And obviously, I disagreed with that, at least obvious to me at the time when I was talking with him. And he went through the conversation with me, and he finally brought up, said it has to do with corporeal, meaning body, not corporatist, like the corporations owning the means of control and so on. So it's a methodology of understanding that there are different sectors in the marketplace, and different groups will have representatives in their particular fields discussing how best to apply the means of production towards certain ends, kind of like a representative republic or something, except that it would be coming from particular groups as far as industry types. You would have people from the banking sector, people from education, people from I don't know, food production, whatever, agriculture, things of that nature, and then they would be the rulers of this particular group. So it's kind of like a philosopher king type of understanding of how to have a society run. And so I had to admit that he had a point there. He was actually correct. Um, were you under the impression that corporatist was being run by corporations as
Well,
a
I would define corporatist as sort of the same as mercantilism.
yeah, see, it's actually a different it's a different philosophy. So that was kind of a surprise. So anyway, then of course we get all these other chattering heads that come in there and have a discussion, and we're trying to have a conversation, and they start blowing things completely off and not understanding what it is you're saying. So um, there's this claim. It says ANCAPs are anarchists who's grown up around Cold War propaganda and think socialism's a dirty word, or capitalists who don't like paying taxes and aren't really anarchists. What do you say to that?
There aren't really anarchists.
They're not really anarchists, obviously.
Oh, because we're capitalists. Is that it?
Yeah.
Well, he's wrong. I mean, he's wrong.
We don't want rulers, right?
Right.
But then I guess the claim is that that if you have property ownership, land ownership, where you can have a person who has a, I don't know, a factory or something like that, they can go around telling other people what to do as a ruler would, because
Well,
they own it.
no. Well, no, you can't. I mean, it's yes, it's true. I might go to work and my boss might say do this or you're fired, but that's not ruling. That's I'm paying you to do a certain job, and if you don't do it, I will cease to pay you. That's
Yeah,
not rulership at all. That's
but
not do what I say or I'll beat you up. That's not do what I say or I'll steal your money.
well,
It's
what's the difference
you want
between
me to do
the
something for you? Fine. You want me to do something for you? Pay you? Fine. Then do something for me. What I ask.
okay now, but the what's the difference between, let's say, the corporation own or the business owner having, let's say you've got a business owner who owns 50 acres of land, or 2.5 acres of land, and then you got another business owner that owns the next 2.5 acres, and so on. You go all around the world, and you fill it all up with all these different plots of 2.5 acres of land, where every single inch of land is now owned by um, people who are business owners or private property owners or whatever. But they aren't they now basically exactly the same thing as a state?
How?
Well,
Because
if
they
you don't
they
like it,
own
move.
property.
Yeah, this is my property, and if you don't like it, move. Why isn't it the same kind of thing as having a state? Now, it may have more legitimacy than a state in that he did some homesteading of some sort.
Because the state it isn't the state's property, right? I mean, yes, I could say if you want to go to my home, you have to take off your shoes, but I can't say, um, within my everyone who lives within 100 miles from me or so, you can't wear their shoes in their house. I can't make the rules about someone else's property. The state doesn't own this property. They may think they do, but they certainly didn't acquire it justly, and they don't own it. So that's really the difference. The owner of a place is allowed to make any
Right, but
move.
as I said, I mean, let's accept that now we have legitimate kings who all own their kingdoms, and we have.
But they don't own them. They don't. It's not acquired justly. How do they own them? Just by saying I own this?
No, I'm talking about, let's say we have 2.5 acres worth of land for every single person that has homesteaded those 2.5 acres.
Right.
Okay, now every single inch of land that's arable, that's usable, that's livable, is now owned by somebody.
Right.
Um, they now rule this particular location. They can say what happens or doesn't happen. They are rulers. They are the king of that particular 2.5 acres that they
Okay.
homestead. How is this not different from the state when somebody says, "All right, you don't like my policies in my property, get off my property. If you don't like it, move," is the same theoretical argument.
Because the state doesn't own this property, right? I mean, first of all, who is the state? The state is just a random bunch of people. It switches who the people are. It's based on a vote. Property that's you don't just get based on okay who owns this pen. That's not the way property works. Who owns this shirt? Let's just take a vote on it. Who makes up the government switches after a certain number of years. The government is just a fictitious label given to people who are a certain moral right to use violence on other people. They don't own this country. No one owns. There's no owner of the United States.
Okay, well, in effect, though, isn't it the same result that the people who are stuck on your property, which is now legitimate, though,
How are
have
they
the
stuck
same?
on my property?
What's that?
How are they stuck on my property?
Because there's only a certain amount of physical land to go around, right?
Okay, and they happen to be in my land.
Yeah, they happen to be. I don't know. Let's say that you own a fairly substantial amount of land. Actually, you own, let's say, 20 acres that you homesteaded by making condominiums.
Okay.
And you've got a bunch of people who are comfortable living in the condominiums. They're perfectly happy with your rules. And then they have a child. The child reaches the age of maturity. They're now 18, or whatever the legal, whatever our definition of coming to be self-owner. and this person's like, hey, you know what? I don't like this. I don't want to live here. I don't like your rules.
Okay, he's free to leave.
The same response that you give to, that the statist would give about, you know, you don't like it, leave, about the country, right?
Right, but one is legitimate and one isn't. That's the difference.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
murder and killing produce the same result. The person is dead. But killing can be legitimate if done in self-defense. Murder is illegitimate. So it's not just that the result is the same. That
Okay,
doesn't
so
matter.
when the statist says, well, no, government is legitimate, they have no basis for it as far as we understand it. But if a person who says, well, I homesteaded it, this claim is now legitimate, why?
What do you mean? I'm not sure what you want me to say. There are certain ways to obtain and own property. You get it through inheritance, you get it through trade, and you get it through creation. So if you own property that way, you get to control who enters that property, what the rules of that property are.
Okay, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get us to clearly explain basically what it is that homesteading is, why it matters, what is homesteading as a concept, and it's, to me, it's no different than what you do when you take food and convert it into body material. Okay, you are taking something that was unclaimed in nature, or that somebody else gave you or traded with you, you know, legitimately for, but you're taking something that is that nobody else is saying that's mine, because theft is wrong. Okay,
Mhm.
and then you're putting it into some process, and the output is that you have a different something, whether it be I've got increased muscles, I've got new skin, I've got new hair, I've got new enamel on my teeth, or whatever, you know, it might happen to be, or I've got new moccasins, or I've got new saw, I've got a new um, I don't know, house, home. The home actually is land that has been converted in from something that was unclaimed and untouched into something else through a process that I chose to do. It is my physical control over the world that changed that resource into something else. And by me having made decisions for it and converting it into something else that was a result of my decision making, it is now mine. This is how property ownership is obtained: is that somebody, you know, I converted, all these chemicals and stuff into cells in my body, and now they are me, and I own that. Same concept, right?
I mean, look, someone has to decide who gets to use this land, right? If I say take off your shoes, and another person says I don't have to, one of us is making a moral claim. Either the person who says I don't have to take off my shoes in this house because I decide what happens in this house, or I get to decide. And so the question is who gets to make the rules. Saying no one is ever going to make the rules is just bullshit, right? I mean, who decides, if you take a shit or if you piss? Some guy decides how the owner of the property works eventually.
Well,
So it's just
that's certainly going to undermine a lot of anarcho-communist positions, because in essence, if somebody makes a decision, that is what ownership is, right?
yeah, right. Ownership is the exclusive control of something.
Well, it doesn't even have to be exclusive control; it's final control, really. But I mean, there are some times when you would have exclusive control, but if you wanted to have your spouse have control over your home, and you're the one that made the home, and you want to designate that, I guess you're still in control, so to speak, because you have granted that control to them. But I don't know, you could go halvesies on something and both have this equal amount of control, right?
Mm-hmm.
Be kind of a bad idea, though, if you have a 50-50 share of something and you get into a disagreement. There's no way for you to finally come to how do you finally break that 50 per 50 disagreement? It's kind of a tough situation, I would think. Okay, all right. So then let's see here. The idea that I said, okay, so I said to them, I said, that capitalism is basically competitive cooperation, the specialization of labor, and owning the fruits of your labor. That's capitalism. Is that a sufficient definition for capitalism, do you think?
Sure.
Well, they instead came back with, all right, let's see here. Capitalism is
Private ownership of the means of production. That's it.
let's see. Specifically, he's saying that it requires wage labor, and that it requires wealth disparity. And let's see, where is?
Who gives a shit? What is this obsession with equality? Okay, yes, there's also height disparity and brain disparity and look disparity and also age disparity. Not everyone dies at the same age. Who gives a fuck?
Well, that is a good point. You know, one of the things that like, for example, Darren Withers, one of the founders of the page, was specifically, you know, bothered by that concept. He, you know, when people pointed out, well, you know, really you have to have wealth for stuff to work. You have to have, if you're going to have people who are living in a world, you create more wealth by doing, you know, capitalism. It works. It really does actually create more wealth. And if you compare like Singapore and Hong Kong to, let's say, North Korea, the evidence is very clear. So then,
people are fucking idiots, all right? They seem to believe that there are people who are just born rich and other people are just born poor, and the only way you can get ahead is by stepping on other people. They don't know anything about how wealth is created, because even if you're going to make the claim that you just inherit wealth, well, how about the first person who owns it? Right? At some point, wealth has to be created. They don't ever answer that question. They seem to believe that they're just people who are born rich, and certain people who are just born poor. And the fact that you're rich can only be done is only at someone else's expense. It's just emotional. It's just an emotional argument that's circular and they don't explain anything. They don't ever answer the question, how is wealth created, ever.
Well, I mean, at least he acknowledges that. He says, Darren Withers says, the free market creates growth. Nobody has ever denied that. It's the income inequality that causes the problem.
Fine, I'm not going to say that there's anything wrong with income inequality. I want there to be income inequality. I want there to be as much income inequality as there is possible. I'm not a fan of equality. Okay, the only way you can have equality is through a dictatorial power. Okay, Harrison Bergeron is the logical conclusion of equality. You're taller than me, so I'm going to chop off your legs. Okay, equality is just equal suffering.
Yeah, but even then, if you had a dictatorial power, that person's not equal.
Right, yes, so it's incoherent and impossible. Fine.
Yeah,
I'm not a fan of equality. I don't care. All the violations of people's rights are always done under the guise of equality. I'm not going to defend equality because it's an immoral evil and an impossibility. So
yeah, the person who actually works his ass off for providing for his family actually has a right to what it is that he produced, instead of having to give it to other people who sit on their asses doing jack shit. You know,
Well, look, I don't think that's fair. There are people who work very hard and are still poor. But so what? There are people who study a lot, many hours for a test, and they get C's and D's. Right? The grade you get on a test isn't based on how many hours you study. It's, do you know the material? How rich you are isn't determined by how hard you work. It's, are you good at what you do, and are you good and productive in this line of field? It's not how hard you work. You're not poor because you're lazy. There are a lot of poor people who work their ass off, and there are a lot of rich people who don't have to struggle that hard, just like there are people who get A's and study not that long. But who cares? I'm not saying that if you're poor, you're lazy. I'm saying you're working enough.
Yeah, it's about productivity, really. So the labor theory of value fails that one as well. I shouldn't have said it that way. You're absolutely correct. So apparently, let's see here. Frank Magari will be jumping on in here shortly, hopefully. And Darren wants me to stop talking about him. Well,
Why?
I mean, if he's gonna, if,
Tell him to come on your show and he'll defend himself. Otherwise, we're going to still talk about him.
yeah, if he wants to come on and defend himself, then that's great. But otherwise, I guess we'll have to have the conversation in the future in text. But it's just kind of silly.
And the people who talk about equality, I would guess, are always people who feel that they're below equality. That it's just, people always use the term greedy, but how about envy and how about resentment? This person has more than me. Wah, it's not fair. This person is, okay, I don't go around punching beautiful women in the face because it's not fair they're better looking than me. It's not fair. Well, tough shit. And look, maybe I exercise and I just suck at what I do, and maybe they're just naturally pretty. There are people who eat crap and, and just don't gain weight and get lucky. I'm not saying it's based on effort, but I don't have a right to harm other people just because they have things in life that, I wish I wanted.
Right. It's definitely a bad thing to pursue, equality on that level. Although we hate statists, Margaret Thatcher was pretty damn right when she said to the Socialist Party speakers that she was talking to, she said, "What you want is here. You see that we're pretty much equal. Instead of here instead of here. Now there's more disparity up here, but everybody is better off instead of down here."
One of the things that's I always find interesting about these people who complain about wealth disparity is they never actually say we want what the equality is. It's just equality in itself, right? But why is equality good? It's sort of like change. Well, change can be good or change can be bad. Changing a shitty diaper, good. But, it's not necessarily change isn't always good. It depends what you're changing into. Depends what the change is. Depends what the equality is. Why is equality a good in and of itself?
Well, equality certainly isn't a good in of itself, other than equality as far as maybe consistency. Consistency would be a generally good thing for.
No, that's not true.
For the most part, I say
not if you have a more immoral philosophy. If you're consistently immoral, I hope you're as inconsistent as possible.
No, but the thing is that if you, let's say, for example, say that it's okay to use other people's bodies in ways that they don't want.
Right, I don't want consistency.
Well, then the rule of consistency would be that you now have applied that to yourself. And in order to prevent, bottom line is if you start doing that, then other people get to use you and your body in ways that you don't like, and lo and behold, now this person is being used as a lab rat for testing new innovations in technology for biotech. But anyway, Frank has decided to join us today. And
who is this Frank guy? Is he a commie or is he a capitalist?
Frank, welcome to the Anarchist Experience. This is Daniel, and I'm Robert. Certainly appreciate you jumping on here, and why don't you give us your biggest concern about or worry about what you think anarcho-capitalism is.
And do you have a camera, by the way? Do you have a camera?
I think he's trying to work on his connection or something. I hear stuff in the background, but maybe that's you.
Yeah, the socialist.
Yeah, I do have a camera.
Oh, there I'm hearing something.
So I guess we're just waiting for his camera.
Okay, are you there? Frank?
I'm just sorting a few things out.
Okay.
Is there any Ancoms that are going to join the debate?
Well, I don't know. I think that you might have sent it to somebody else, and so far Darren does not look like.
Yeah, okay. I'll just try to get more people because there's not much point in them just having a small one. I'll try to get like 2 or more.
Well, I find that if you actually have multiple people, too many people, you can't really get a conversation going. So actually having like a one-on-one is something that I really do like. So I mean, let me pose to you some fundamental questions. All right.
Okay.
Would you say that a person who takes something that was unclaimed by anyone else and converts it into something else would then own that something else? For example, if somebody took an apple from a tree and then cut it up and turned it into apple slices that they were going to eat, would that be something that they would own?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if I can then extrapolate, let's say that I go and I find some trees with vines, and I go to this tree with vines, and I or actually not even trees with vines. Well, yeah, it's fine. Tree with vines. I find this tree with vines. Nobody's made any claim upon it. I take the vines down. I mess with them in some fashion, and I create a net. Is that still mine? Do I own the net? For my hair,
Like
so I
an
can keep
apple
my
tree?
hair specific. What's that?
Yeah,
I'm
you can
sorry.
keep your hair, but that's...
So I've got
I
this
don't quite
net that I can
understand what you're
use.
saying.
Okay, I could convert it into a net, and I could use it as a a hair net to just keep my hair in a particular pattern or whatever that I like. I just wanted it as a net for my hair. That would be my property. I own it, right?
Yes.
Okay. Then if I attach a stick to it, it's still my property, right?
Yep.
Then if I use that net to go out and collect fish, which are currently unclaimed in the river or in the ocean, the net is still mine, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And if Daniel sees my fishing activity and he says to me, "Hey, can I use your net?" And I say to him, "Oh, sure. As long as you give me a couple of fish out of the ones that you catch."
Well, why would he need to give the fish? Why wouldn't you just give him the net?
Because it's my net, and I happen to not want him to screw it up. Because, quite frankly, Daniel's a little bit reckless with stuff that's not his.
Hypothetically, of course.
Because there's wear and tear that occurs on things. Things wear down as you use them, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm trying to conserve the fact that I've made something that took me a lot of time and effort and not break it prematurely. So I, have to get something in return in order to justify, the wear and tear that will, damage my net. Not to mention, if I don't get something from Daniel for him using my net, I'm not going to have the fish that I need to eat.
Yeah, but if he damages it, shouldn't he just replace it?
He doesn't know how to make nets.
Yeah, then
Regardless,
maybe he could give fish instead.
I'm certainly good at fishing. That's fine. I can do my fishing thing. What if Daniel says to me, "I tell you what, if you give me some of those fish that you're catching with your net, I'll make you a house. You just have to give me a bunch of fish over the course of time in order to equate to that house." And we come to an agreement. We're happy with this. That's certainly doable. That's reasonable. I would assume.
So you're talking about trading fish for a house?
Yeah, maybe it just is a large number of fish over the course of time. It's a payoff thing.
But
One fish isn't worth a house, right?
no, it's not. But you could collectively build the house.
Oh, sure, we could, but that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking. Daniel's really good at woodworking. He's got skills that I don't have, and he's happy building houses. He's good at building houses. He's just not very good at fishing. But I'm good at fishing, and he's good at house building. So he makes an offer to me that sounds perfectly acceptable. That I'll give him some of my fish. He'll give me a house over the and over the course of time, I'll have given him enough fish that we feel that it's a benefit to both of us. That would certainly be something that a voluntary interaction, could happen, right?
Yes, that probably could happen. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so after it's all said and done, we've made our deal, and he's got this fish, and I've got my house, and we're all happy. And I'm living in my house. This domicile is, it's a livable, enjoyable place for me to be. Turns out, after a few wheeling and dealings and discussing with people, doing voluntary free trade with other people, I end up having a bed and a mirror and all sorts of cool stuff in my house. I even end up getting a Torah, which was this book that was written. Okay, it's an interesting book, and it says that it's important for me to keep my foods separate in certain ways. And so I keep my food separate in certain ways, and one of the things I have to do is have 2 different ovens to keep my cheese and my meat separate.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I legitimately traded freely with other people for these ovens. So I've got 2 ovens and 2 dishwashers to keep the meat and the cheese separate. That's legitimate, isn't it? That I can have 2 ovens and 2 dishwashers?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure where you're getting at.
Hello.
Maybe we should just ask, what is your objection? Maybe we
Okay, no, let me finish the thought process. Okay, now I've got friends who want to come by and use my oven in order to make some cookies. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not using that particular oven because I'm cooking meat and I'm not cooking anything in the other oven, so they're welcome to use it. Cookies don't really have meat in them anyway, or cheese either. So they can use either one, doesn't matter. In fact, they use both because they like to make lots of cookies because they got a lot of kids. And they come over and they offer to do, to do some work for me, cleaning my house, in order to, pay me for the fact that the oven's going to get dirty. It's going to be kind of messy, so they clean up the kitchen, in this process. So they're doing labor for me as well, just because they're nice, and we're agreeing to let them use my ovens, and everything's happy and fine. Later on, we find out that, I don't know, they broke their arm, and so now they're not as good at cleaning the house, but they've got a friend who is good at cleaning houses, and they offer to give them cookies in order to clean the house. So you see where I'm going with this is basically, in my domicile, I've got people who are trading things, whether it be services or products, who are benefiting from my capital, called an oven, in order to benefit themselves, and I'm getting something out of it, basically free house cleaning. Okay? This is capitalism, or the free market, at work, and it's not a violation of anybody's anything yet.
Hello. I've just joined in like about a few minutes ago, and I just want.
Oh, welcome, Sam.
Hello. Thank you for getting a link or whatever, whoever linked me. I wanted to know what the whole thesis this is, or like the hypothetical adversary, of course, of the what's going on here. Like, I'm guessing this is something to do with property relations and trade. So, because I hear like some voluntary trade here and some voluntary trade that, and just give me a little whole idea of this, please.
Okay, well, the question is, at least I found that when I deal with anarcho-communists or anarcho-socialists or anarcho-syndicalists or just communists or socialists, that they will come to a point where they do not accept property ownership once it moves past some particular weird, nebulous concept.
You understand that there is personal property and communal property, right?
Right.
No.
And what I'm doing is I'm showing that it's an absurd construction that doesn't actually exist. It is a fake, made-up concept that is used to somehow justify or legitimize their particular belief system. That when you actually deal with property, what it is somebody taking something that was unowned and unclaimed and converting it into something else, and then making all the other arrangements that occur after that are a voluntary interaction between people. Now, we've obviously had some really bad crap happen in the past in the world due to what people call capitalism, but that's not that's not a free market trade. Go ahead. What was that?
I'm only just trying to get an idea here. So, if hypothetical is that you create something out of your spare time and you keep that as personal property, right? And you want to exchange with other people freely, that's fine. I don't see the problem with that at all. What I've kind of gotten the idea of at the minute, yeah.
Okay, well, I think that.
I'm sorry to interrupt for a second, but I'm sort of curious what you guys' objections are.
I'm guessing there are kind of individual objections with property because there's not that many people have either studied it enough or whatever. Have we come to like established definitions yet of certain properties?
All right, did you catch that, Daniel? I mean, did that make sense?
That's what he's saying.
Oh, no.
I mean,
I'm only just reading from Black Rose's just recent comment on the chat. If we've come to establish definitions yet of what we're talking about, and
yes.
Oh, okay.
Of course, I don't want to kind of go into that. So yeah.
Okay. Well, first thing, let's establish the definition of capitalism the way that Ancaps use it. This is the way that I would like to discuss it, not the way that that Karl Marx, claimed that he coined the term, which actually the term capitalism existed prior to him using it. But anyway, the term capitalism is, in our understanding, is free markets that have no obligation to have wage labor, to have all property being owned by individuals or corporations. None of that is required. It is only that you are the owner of the fruits of your labor, that things that you produce, and this includes if you convert land from being unused land into a ranch, for example, or a homestead, for example. So it is then also not legitimate to initiate the violence of stealing somebody's stuff.
What's that noise?
Oh, apologies, that's my laptop. It's very loud.
Okay.
Sounds like a vacuum cleaner.
Yeah, I get that a lot.
Like a vacuum cleaner. So basically, it's the
non-aggressive. If you want me to mute myself, that would be harsh. Right. Continue.
So, not initiating force against another person or property, and the idea that you own what you have converted from a state of non-use or non-claimed status into a new thing that you've put your labor into is now yours. That's it. That's capitalism. And then I guess are there any other definitions that you believe that we should have here, Black Rose?
If we're only discussing capitalism, then I think this is adequate.
Okay. Are we going to?
If this is what we're discussing, I mean, we could give like what we would define as like capitalism and certain things, but I think we can just run with your definition for the sake of argument.
All right. So I don't know if everybody, if both of you guys heard the explanation, but basically I'll bullet point it for you. Somebody can convert stuff into a tool. We know that these things happen, that they can actually convert this thing into a tool. And if it's a tool that is personal in nature, like having it on my head as a hairnet, that's somehow legitimate. But then if I attach a stick to it and can use it to harvest fish, that's not legitimate. This is somehow a false break. Why is it somehow illegitimate? Because it's got a stick attached to it and it has a different usability. Now, if you still accept that I can own the fishing net, okay, then I can make voluntary interactions occur with my net and lending it to someone else and them giving me something in exchange. And this is where quote-unquote wage labor can occur. And the same thing occurs with the idea that I can own a domicile. If I can actually build property to have a house, then I could have an oven in this house. I could have 2 ovens in this house. I could have 2 dishwashers in this house. And if somebody else would like to use my ovens because of some particular interest, they might offer to give me something in exchange for the favor of letting them use my oven. And this again is where wage labor as a evil kind of exists. But you're saying that these are illegitimate in at least the anarcho-communist.
You don't know what they're saying. That's why I sort of wanted to start the discussion with what are their objections.
Yeah.
You know what their objections are first.
Okay. Yeah. What are let's start with the Black Rose. What would you say your objections to anarcho-capitalism are?
Well, you could, I guess, divide it into what is theoretical and what is practical. I tend to be more interested in like the practical consequences of things. At least I think that currently.
Okay.
And
like what? Can
then
you
I
give
would
an
say
example?
that. Well, I should have been more prepared for it. No, but I'm just like outlining my
So consequentialist.
idea that I tend to think that capitalism, in whatever form it manifests itself, leads to consequences that are to like the detriment of society. It leads to.
That's very vague. Can you maybe give an example? Can you give an example of here is something that existed that I attribute to capitalism and why it's bad? Because now you're talking very abstract. I'm not really sure what you mean.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not really sure what I mean either. I'm really tired right now.
Okay. Well, I'll give you an example that I think that you might see if you agree with this example and claim that it is the cause of capitalism. Okay, and if this is a good example for what you're talking about, then let's go with it. Okay. What capitalism does is it creates a disparity of wealth, especially when it comes to land. That people who own land can continue to benefit financially from their trades that are occurring there and increase their amount of wealth, so much so that they can just buy more land, develop it, and then continue the process over and over again until they own a lot of land and can then become in essence a dictator. Would you say that that's a legitimate beef that you would have with anarcho-capitalism?
That's a very specific thing, but I suppose that would be one thing.
Okay, and we also have Sam Warren here. Would you say that would be a claim or a worry that you would also have against anarcho-capitalism?
I haven't really gotten much into it yet. I'm still kind of getting the whole idea of this.
Okay. Frank, would you say that, having a concern that a property owner, a landowner, could, increase his profits and then buy more land and increase his profits and buy more land and then eventually become essentially a dictator? Is that a concern that you would say that anarcho-capitalism can or would cause that to happen?
I only consider it vague because you said dictator in the end of the depends on what you mean by that, and by the way, if one accumulates so much profit out of that, that they could lead to some dictatorial power of some sort, I wouldn't necessarily make that the case. I'll just consider it to be more their high within competition, they're bypassing their rivals and all that.
Right.
It's because if we're talking about capitalism, we're talking about 3 main factors, and that is wage labor, competition, and the market. And
Okay.
of course, and the other one, of course, that Marx kind of details is the law of value as well. But we'll step away from that at the minute. We'll keep onto this in a minute.
Right.
And,
Okay. Well, keep in mind that the way we understand the free market in capitalism is different than, it does not require wage labor. It certainly could include it as an option. It certainly doesn't require that there be competition, although there could be, and probably would be.
Well, it's got to have those main factors for it to be called capitalism. If it was to be its structure as an economic system to be capitalism, it's got to have these 4 factors of that kind of certain characteristics that apply to which call it capitalism.
Keep in mind, they will only be potentials for. They're not necessarily a requirement of. And also, I would suggest that...
I'd say they'd be inherent. Just
right.
I mean, the only requirement of capitalism is private ownership. That I get to own private property. That if I own a factory, I get to control the factory. That I can hire people, perhaps if I want. Although there's no guarantee that people will agree to work for me. But it's mainly just private ownership. I mean, I'm not really a fan, no offense, Robert, of Robert saying, are these objections to capitalism because it's coming from a capitalist himself. I would much rather hear your guys' objections to it instead of, a straw man version.
Oh, so you don't want me to make a straw man and then bash it down?
Right. I don't want you to do that. I don't want you to do that.
Oh, yeah, and... with the title having the Facebook group page, Ancap versus Ancom, we do get a lot of straw mans from both of the positions on a daily basis when it comes to any topic.
That's why I don't want Robert or myself to discuss. Well, are these the objections? I want to hear them from the anti-capitalists or the socialists or communists or whatever form of collectivist you may be yourself.
Okay. Frank commented on Pinochet, Chile's free market, and although I don't have that much knowledge over it, I'm not going to really.
I don't think that's not an objection because the first word is anarcho and Pinochet is a politician. Right? That's like saying the objection to anarchy is a government leader. That's not really.
I do understand that. That is fine, but that's how we see as a free market, not as just anarcho-capitalism. I'd say more in the terms of like neoliberal policy making and all sorts, and just like the privatization, open trade, and such. Especially when you looked at Yugoslavia when it went through its economic crisis during the 1990s, when it broke out of civil war. IMF debt, especially when it came to, since debt was not being paid, of course, Yugoslavia went through a really fast change, which pretty much worsened the economy by rapid privatization, open trade, and all of the components of capitalism threw into that, and pretty much say like a major collapse in the system in general. I'd say just like neoliberalism would be a form of free market as way of policy making when it comes to open trade, privatization of industry and such. And
your problem is open trade, that they're not tariffs. You support tariffs?
I don't support. It depends what you mean by.
Saying you're not allowed to trade in a foreign country. You could only buy goods made in this country.
That'd be a closed economy. We don't advocate a closed economy.
Right, but he's asking, do you advocate that?
No.
Then what's your objection to open trade? It seems like we agree.
Yeah, we all agree on open trade. That was just an example of free market capitalism.
But it's not.
But you just said the problem with free market capitalism is open trade, which we all support.
Yes, and
so how is a problem something you support? You support problems?
Oh, Daniel, don't go that way.
A lot of problems.
Don't go that way. All right. All right. Let's just clarify a couple of things. The Yugoslavian thing happened. Were they using currency that was a freely tradable and nobody owned it but government currency, or were they using government?
It was the thing, it's very complex because the banking system had 380 communal banks within the Yugoslavia area and had one whole national bank within it. And it was, they didn't think about when they were changing the whole policies and all sorts, they didn't think about the complexity of the banking system. And I think that's what kind of made it collapse in general. I've
Right.
seen articles on the general economic analysis through on its stages within the Soviet relations of full nationalization. Then it went into socialization of industry and workers' self-management and deployed workers' councils, which made it very susceptible to growth, and especially to one of its main reasons to why it was kind of a very big economy, bigger than most Eastern blocs.
We understand it was a big economy, but the question that I'm putting forward to you is, basically this. Almost every single interaction when it comes to trade is facilitated by money, by currency.
Yes.
Okay, and almost every single loan that is ever made is facilitated by money.
Yes.
And the fact is that the currency that was being used in the Yugoslavian problem is owned and dictated by a government, therefore not a free market.
Alright, I was only saying that, of course, when they went into the stages of neoliberalization, made the economy worse by the IMF just pushing the economy in general.
Right. And the IMF is certainly not,
It's,
that's not a capitalist organization. It is a government organization.
yes, and
Okay,
government which manages economies in general and
right. Yeah.
such.
So I guess that point is not really a knock against anarcho-capitalism. And so what we're asking for is, if you were to look at the philosophy of anarcho-capitalism, the claim that we would have rulers, that there would be only free trade, and that you owned what you converted from a state of non-use into something else, and now you own it.
It's the only problem when I try to think of examples of anything going towards capitalism, because when I think of the free markets, I think of neoliberalism straight away. I think of Latin America's experiment with the free market during the 20th century towards now. With massive wealth disparities in Brazil, especially.
Okay.
And of course, with Sub-Saharan Africa, they have boomed quite a bit for this year, especially when it comes to annual growth rate. They've done pretty well when it came to free markets, I guess. But trade has especially been definitely regulated, only for the sake of that they ain't getting their trade from like exploited areas of like child labor or like anything to do with like around that. It's based on fair trade organizations and so on, etc. But I want to kind of, is there like any kind of example of anarcho-capitalism, like,
In
or
history?
like anything towards like any like even in a primitive stage of just like how you would think of anarcho-capitalism, or like at all you would
Perhaps
say
the
as in,
Iroquois?
sorry?
Perhaps the Iroquois? The Iroquois tribes had a concept of owned property, that this was your vest or this was your spear. There were tools that people owned that were theirs, but certainly they kind of didn't necessarily mind other people taking and using their tools necessarily, as long as they asked.
Yeah. Okay.
But it was a system where pretty much you had a huge amount of non-scarcity when it came to a lot of things, almost everything. There was plenty of plenty of bison out there to hunt. There's plenty of wood to chop down. There's plenty of things to make spears
So like
out of.
a post-scarcity system then, like a post.
It was kind of, but I mean they still had the
Sounds more like a
scarcity of.
scarcity system.
What's that?
No, it's not really post-scarcity just because of like the semantics of the situation. It's more like a pre-scarcity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
It would be
you.
it would be pre-scarcity, and but it would be some scarcity that occurred. You would have only a specific spot where you could fish, and have the best fishing spot. You know, there are certain spots that
Right.
you could fish, and only one person could sit in that spot at the time. And basically, it was first come, first serve in that type of situation, where they went along. But they had chosen to have a fairly they moved around a lot, so they didn't really claim specific plots of land as their own for a very long period of time. They did certainly claim plots of land of their own for their homestead, for their domicile. Now, as far as what we're talking about in a more modern type of an era, there was certainly a lot of it going on in the Wild West, so to speak, where people would claim land for speculation, for digging gold, digging for gold, panning for gold, things of that nature, and they would mark the area that they had claimed. Then nobody else would use that land, and if there was a claim jumper, somebody actually did jump somebody's claim, what would happen is that the community would either ostracize him by he got a reputation as being a claim jumper, and then would not be allowed to buy food or sex at the various different city stores in like San Francisco, for example. There was really no government to speak of. There were people who were guns for hire who essentially acted as sheriffs in the area to deal with potential marauders and robbers. So that would be a potentially similar situation to the anarcho-capitalist concept.
Okay.
Daniel, can you think of anything else?
Not really much. I mean, you had, I think medieval Iceland for a little. You had Ireland for a little. The not so wild West. That's pretty much it. I know.
Yeah, the thing with the Iceland and the Ireland thing is I don't know enough of the history of those to really claim that they were anarcho-capitalist-esque. But as far as I understand it, the way they did.
They were close. I mean, yeah, I don't know how you get 100%.
Yeah. All right. So the Black Rose asks in the chat here. He says that anarcho-capitalist society is very susceptible to an increased amount of social injustice.
Right. That's a sentence, and I don't understand what it means.
What does social injustice mean?
Social injustice, so that is like societal justice, or injustice rather, against social groups in society carried out on a almost systematic level.
So,
again, I'm not sure what you're saying.
Well, I don't want to straw man you, so I can give you an example. Daniel's going to bug about it, but I think this is what you're talking about. Let's say, for example, we live in a community where there is a distrust of people who have dark skin.
For an example, yeah. So racism on a large scale. If you live in a racist society, you live in a society that is socially unjust.
Right. I'm not sure what that has to do with capitalism.
No, what I'm saying is that capitalists, as we define, are like people who own means of production. I know you don't really distinguish between means of production and like non-means of production, but still, people who own means of production, like large factories, for an example, they have a certain amount of power, and employ people. They have a certain amount of power. They have power over the said means of production, which means their prejudice, if they are allowed to act upon them, can become large societal problems.
Like, what do you mean?
Well,
for an example, a very racist factory owner could exclude all black people from, like, he could choose not to employ or serve black people.
Well, I would argue in that situation, capitalism is the best solver for it, because if I am a business owner and I hate black people and I don't employ them, and I'm in competition, so we're talking about a free market with another guy in the same industry as me who doesn't discriminate and is just going to hire the best employee, he's going to have more productive employees than me. He may even have cheaper employees than me, because if you understand supply and demand, if my demand for white people increases, but the supply of white people is not increased, I'm going to have to pay a higher labor price to hire white people only, which means the person who is not racist gets cheaper and more productive labor, and I am punished for my racism by going out of business.
Well, I don't think he's saying that though, Daniel. I think you're. I'm sorry, I can't. We can't hear you.
Hold on.
He's,
Okay, were you was somebody talking with somebody else that was nearby? Is that what was going on?
he was. Yeah, he's. Don't worry about it. So overall explanation or answer yet again is based on the supply and demand flux on white people, which paid a lot more higher in.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that.
So I'm trying to kind of get an idea of it. So black people in your kind of analysis is that are cheaper, cheap labor and more productive, and so on, right?
That's if we're saying that if we live in, let's say, a racist society,
Yeah.
where more people want to hire white people, then white people will command a higher rate, but they're not necessarily going to be more productive. You're just paying them more because they're white, and therefore a person who doesn't discriminate gets a cheaper labor, and the black people may even be more productive, and even if they're equally productive, there's cheaper labor that money is saved to be used in other ways, and therefore I am at an advantage.
That increases.
You're saying
capital increases the rate of profit, right? So the cost of
that's not what he's saying. He's saying that look, if let's say that I've got a factory.
it's the consequences of the social group that.
I was only constituting that variable capital as human labor in general is such as what generates value, human labor, increases also the rate of profit. If so, cheap labor is facilitated upon them.
Okay, let me see if I can clarify this. All right, let's say that we've got two factories, two factory owners. They both have 50 employee potential. They can hire 50 people. Okay, and they live in a community that has 50 black people and 50 white people.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, and then a new guy comes along and he moves in, and he's going to make a factory, and he's a racist. And he's going to make a 50-person factory. Now, turns out that the other two guys have, hired about equal levels of blacks and whites. The new guy only wants whites. Well, now all these whites, all these 50 white people who are laborers can say, well, this guy's wants me, and he's not even considering the other person. So my value as far as how much I can demand for my labor has increased. Because he can't choose an alternative to me because I'm white and they're black. You see how that works?
So this is subjective value, right?
Well, the person has made a subjective value claim because they said that they're racist. There's no real value. There's no actually real value.
I only see it like actual value. I kind of mean by, if we were to semantically speak, is by what is measurable in labor production. I don't mean like subjective value and what I find this is variable, because something is useless cannot be actually variable at all in by objective. If you were to subjectively value like a mud pie or anything like that, then that's what you find variable, but that's not what's generating value in labor.
Right. Well, what we're talking about, though, I mean, there is a subjective value set being indicated here when you say racism, because he's claiming that there is some value in having white employees and not black employees, even if there is or is not a productive value difference as far as the actual innate productivity. So he is placing his subjective values as part of his decision making, and bad subjective values that don't accurately reflect the actual intrinsic value, which
Right.
which
Yeah.
productivity is an intrinsic value. It actually exists. We know that this guy can produce faster
Yes.
than this guy.
There
So,
are intrinsic values in commodities, and it's
well, there is no intrinsic value in commodities other than its actual functional ability.
Yeah.
We know that, but the preference as to what it is that you want to have as the output creates the subjectivity. But we do know that
Yeah.
helium has a certain buoyancy, whereas oxygen doesn't. So there is an innate value in helium balloons for making things go up versus oxygen balloons not.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so what I guess what Daniel you were basically saying is that if you had, let's say, for example, a socialist community or a communist community where you had a majority of the community was racist, would you not also see what would I guess you're calling it social injustice there?
I wouldn't really.
It wouldn't be communist then, because
Okay.
I mean social injustice is sort of antithetical to communism. We strive to accommodate all.
Okay,
one's
so
needs.
Right.
would you?
Don't look,
But
Robert.
my problem
If
is
if
that
it's bad, it's no longer communist.
no
We're not
it's
tired of shouting and strawmans
it
quickly.
is communism, because communism is based
I
on the
clarify
idea that
that.
everyone should have their needs and wants satisfied. But that's not.
I would say more that kind of hypothetical isn't really realistic in the terms of would
What?
that even happen in the first place. It doesn't go into historical context. I haven't seen any Ancom society attempted with a majority of people racist at all. So
But
I
the-
wouldn't.
I haven't
My
seen
problem though is that
Ancap
capitalism.
society where majority of the population is
thing
racist
is-
either. But we accepted your premise and went with it.
Yeah, the
So
thing
yeah,
is that
if we-
capitalism has a specific thing that communism doesn't, and that is that it grants power over the means of production to singular individuals or small groups of individuals, and
so
that is they can then use their power to influence society in a.
No,
I
but
get you.
why is that problem absent under socialism? Under socialism, if
Because
the community owns it,
socialism has democratic control over the means of production and not exclusive
Right.
control.
Okay, so-
of production
so-
by one
fine,
person or
but
a
then
group
the
of
people who are outvoted under the democratic process are dependent on the masses,
No,
right?
if
So if
you
there's a
use
vote-
our system
This
of
is a
consensus
strong.
democracy.
Is this
What?
consensus democracy? If everyone has an equal share, the equal political power in the process of decision making, and power distribution is equal, thus it would be kind of in conclusion to draw around a consensus where everyone agrees to the decision making. There's
Well,
a
if
process.
everyone agrees, then it's not a democratic process. A democratic
that is-
process is
no.
majority rule. It's not.
No,
No,
that's
that's,
not what democracy
no.
is. Democracy is just like the rule of the people, and there are different types of democracy. Direct consensus democracy is one of them, and that is when you have direct democracy based on consensus.
Okay,
I
wait.
don't know what rule of the people means. You're treating people as a homogeneous factor. There are different people with different beliefs that conflict with each other.
What I mean is
This
that
rule
there
of
are
people is this
people-
one homogeneous product.
There's-
the people together make the decisions instead of someone else making the decisions
but
for
you're
them.
saying the
Someone
people
above them making the decisions.
homogenized thing. Okay, now let's just try to boil it down to, let's say we've got a community of 100 people. Okay, we've got 100 people, 20 of which of them happen to be Jewish. Okay, and 80 of them happen to be Aryan, and they don't care for the Jews. They don't like them. They don't like doing business with them. They don't like hanging around with them. And so then a societal consensus is called upon for, let's say, a community barbecue site where everybody's going to make these barbecue pits. And what happens with your commune, your social justice issue is not gone. These 80 people could say, you know what, we don't want a Jewish fire pit. We just don't want to see it.
they can feel free to disassociate from themselves and create their own groups of people for which they can then create a consensus in their own groups. This
Right.
doesn't have to be a one major association of people altogether. If they want to disassociate, then that's fine. They have the freedom to do so. It's free association.
All right,
They
great.
shouldn't. It
That,
shouldn't
that's
be.
that's perfect. And you know what? The anarcho-capitalist position is the same response. If there's an 80% of this population is interested in doing their thing and they're racists, and the 20% wants to go off and be separate, that's fine. They're welcome to do so. Now the claim is also though that we're going to have an issue with the fact that there's power coming from a person who has already established capital and owns it. Because they've got a disparity of wealth, they are able to manipulate the system more.
Correct. Yeah.
What
Okay.
I think you're failing
Uh,
to see here is that when it comes to a capitalist system, unless you have a government institution like we have had in almost pretty much every capitalist system, if you don't have that, which limits the number of competitors that can come in, there exists the potential for someone who would like to provide the service or capital to this other group and
right.
take advantage of their unexploited interest, their unexploited opportunity. Now, you call it exploitation. It's actually, they're trading for net benefit. Both people are going to prosper. Um, now, the other thing is that when you have a capitalist society, you have um, wealth creation that occurs across the board. You have things where people have excess, they have surplus, and this creates things
Right.
called investors. And these investors are able to find opportunities that present themselves, like the racist being a jerk and not hiring these potentially good employees who are black. Well, he's going to see an opportunity there, and if it should be financially in his best interest to seek to take advantage of that opportunity and create a new business to compete with the racist. And you will see that because of his financial advantage of having equally skilled laborers working for less money because
Hmm.
their demand is not as high, he's better off, and thus the the system actually punishes people for making subjective value decisions like racism that are less in line or less appropriate to what actually intrinsic value there is.
Okay.
Well,
I find it confusing.
there's still
The only.
I have a few objections.
Yeah.
Like
Go
first,
on.
I would like to say that the social injustice still remains. These people are still being paid less, but you don't have to answer that yet. Uh, just like I want to change the hypothetical scenario. Say there are, if we take again like 100 people, 100 potential people, only 20, only 20 of them are black,
Mm-hmm.
and the entirety of the community is racist. Almost a majority of the community is racist. Almost all those who are not black are racist, let's say.
Okay, let's say 60 out of the 80.
Okay, sure. Um, would this not mean that people are going to be less likely to trade with the person who employs and serves black people?
Well, I would imagine that it kind of depends on which is more important to you, being a racist or having a product that costs less. Now, if you have a society that has 60% pure, just I will not do business with these people who are, um, you know, black, or anyone who does business with them, then they will create a situation where the only consumers that you're going to have for the products that are made by blacks are going to be the 20 blacks and the 20 whites. Now, obviously we're talking thousands, but let's say just keep it um, small numbers for easy math. All right, so then what we will see there is the 40 compared to the 60. Which of them are actually trading efficiently? Which ones are actually achieving a close to intrinsic value, market interaction? Now, we know that the subjective value of the racist is creating a distortion in the economics and is creating less productivity for the same it's creating the same amount of productivity but for a higher cost. And that means that all the people that are in the other group end up having an increase in net wealth. Okay? Their wealth continues to accumulate in higher and higher numbers because they are actually, finding numbers that are appropriate to what the productivity really is instead of a fake thing based on racism. So their increased wealth continues to grow, and now they have the ability to financially put the other person in this, the other group, the other people in a situation where you're going to have to do business with us sometime because we're the only ones that have this now. Okay.
Right. Okay.
So it punishes racism.
Okay.
And also, you've defined power, but I would argue that their power exists beyond in ways that are economic. If someone is, let's say, physically attractive, they get certain advantages in life that people who are less physically attractive get. Is that an example of social injustice? And should something be done to correct that? If people are physically powerful, that may attract a mate who says, okay, this guy's going to protect me more, and he'll have more luck than someone who's weaker. Is that an example of social injustice?
A bit of an exacerbation, don't you think?
Sorry, what?
A bit of an exacerbation or like an over-exaggeration of what you call social injustice. Like...
Well, no, you define social injustice as one person having a power and able to exclude other people from something, right? So there are powers that exist in ways beyond just having a lot of money that can exclude people.
Right. For example, if you had a particular race group that happens to have physical characteristics that are superior than another group when it comes to a specific sport, well, then you would see a disparity in the populations in that sport because of their power, causing social injustice. Is it really fair that we have a population base that is significantly more white than black, but if you look at the NBA, we have significantly higher prevalence of black people in the industry? This is social injustice as far as I understand what the concept of social injustice is.
Right.
Doesn't this, I've heard this reasoning before, and to me it seems like if we're just going to deny the problem of social injustice by equating it to things like this, then you're sort of like legitimizing, or you're saying that things like systemic racism is okay. You're saying that those
No,
who
I
have...
don't think systemic racism is okay.
I'm not saying that you're saying that. I'm saying that that is the logical conclusion.
You're saying it's a part of capitalism, which I don't understand how it is.
I don't like the shouting and...
Okay, yeah, Daniel, let's let them repeat what they were saying here. So please repeat that.
He was only using that as an example, not as what you guys directly said at all. It was just like...
I'm saying it's the logical conclusion based on the premises you are presenting.
Okay, the counterpoint that I would suggest is that what we're saying is that there are cases where this type of thing happens, and they happen because of human nature. Sometimes humans are stupid, and sometimes humans are mean, and sometimes people are tall, and sometimes people are pretty, and it causes social injustice all across the board because we have there are differences between people, and you call it social injustice, we call it variety. Now, when it comes to these disparities that are really affecting a person's livelihood, their ability to actually produce and become a productive member of a society, one of the things that we find is that if you have a socialist or communist type of perspective, is that you tend to not see people able to specialize in their field as much. That they're more prone to kind of be homogenous instead of being exceptional in a particular field, because they don't gain the fruits of their particular labors as much as the person in the capitalist society would. A person who works really extraordinarily hard does not gain 100% of the value that they've contributed in a socialist system, but they do in a capitalist system. Now they can use that added productivity because they've specialized in order to offset their their weaknesses in other areas where they may not have had the height to play basketball, they may not have had the physical strength to play football, they may have not had the physical attractiveness to be a porn star. They might not have had the I don't know dexterity to play instruments, or even to be a surgeon or a engineer. But they certainly have a very good understanding of some specific area, let's say auto mechanics, where they can become one of the best mechanics that's ever worked. Let's say that they work in Formula One race car type things. Well, then yeah, they are actually a really they're able to really prosper because of their own unique focus, specialized interest. Whereas in the socialist system, that doesn't happen. They're not able to do that because of the homogenization of people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that we should have a continuation of this discussion. I would like to address the social injustice thing a bit more. If you're interested in coming back on the show at some point in time, a couple of weeks from now, we'd be glad to have you. I do have a guest coming on our next show. Unfortunately, we have come to the end of the time that we have available to us. We've got like 4 minutes left. So in the 4 minutes, I want to go ahead and give each of one of you an opportunity to go ahead and just I guess we got 3 minutes left. So if you would go ahead and just give me your best, like, this is the biggest problem with anarcho-capitalism, Sam.
Oh, I haven't really at all took any organization to this whatsoever. Like, I haven't really took any time in thinking about it properly.
Is there something that you haven't said that you wanted to say?
Not much, really. I don't really have anything to really address at all. I'll probably end up making a video about anarcho-capitalism whenever I have the time, but yet again, I do have other videos that I would like to do based on free domain, cultists, I guess, and then I've got all this laissez-faire capitalists that I've got to make another video response to, and then I've got all this other stuff about feminism and all sorts to do, and I've got let's say a clusterfuck, let's say, and I apologise for my language, but yeah.
A lot of stuff to do. All right, then, the Black Rose, you've got. I'm in.
Again, I haven't really. I wasn't prepared for this debate. I just sort of. I was sent the link.
Okay.
So I would just recommend, if you go to my channel, it's just the Black Rose on YouTube. There's a video called "Anarcho-Capitalism against social justice," and there's my entire argument for it.
By the way, I think I've got something to really kind of address, and that would just be its biological / kind of environmental sustainability under a system. But yeah, that's anything else. Like, how would you kind of address that in general?
Okay.
Yeah, that's
sustainability is a concern that you believe that anarcho-capitalism does not properly address.
Yeah, I don't really get. I haven't seen that many videos on the environmental awareness of it because.
Okay. Well, we can certainly address those in future discussions there. I do apologize about the sudden nature of the opportunity being presented to you to come on. Daniel and I were talking about just things that we were seeing in this particular discussion group. And that was kind of the plan, but then I figured, why not just go ahead and invite anybody who wants to join to represent that side. So, unfortunately, it was a little bit, kind of random, but I do thank you for coming on, and apologize about sometimes we talk over each other, but it happens. It's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
But definitely thank you for coming on, and I hope that you will continue to keep up the dialogue so that we can find solutions for the problems that we all find offensive, like poverty and just bad stuff. We don't really like the idea of people being
And
unhappy.
social stratification and
Well,
inequality in general. Just
but we like
address those,
inequality somewhat. We like inequality. We like to be able to see that, all right, well, that's a really pretty painting, and that's an okay painting, and that way I can appreciate the really pretty painting a little bit more.
Well, obviously not what we mean by inequality, but okay.
Okay. Well, okay. We'll talk about inequality too sometime, hopefully. So, again, thank you for coming on, and thank everyone for tuning in to the Anarchist Experience. My name is Robert Kruger. This is the Voluntary Virtues Network, and thank you again, Daniel Rothschild, for joining me.